This is Parsec Award-winning author and podcaster Paul E. Cooley, and I'm with Chris Gordon on Hellblazer Biz.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, my lovely audience, wherever you are in the world right now. Welcome to Hellblazer Biz, the show where you get to have your questions answered by your favourite TV, film stars, and authors. Hellblazer Biz is brought to you along with the BS Podcast Network. Check them out for loads of other cool podcasts. Sadly, I need to advertise this because bringing you such wonderful guests doesn't come without costs, and running costs get higher and higher with the more I actually am able to publicise to you. So what I've done is I've created a Patreon scheme where you can donate $1, $5 or $10 on a monthly basis. For $1 a month you will get a thank you on the show and the website and a thank you email. If you donate $5 a month you receive a digital note each month. Your name's listed on the show's patrons list and a shout out on the show, plus some show swag, a bumper sticker, mug, t-shirt. I've not decided yet, but that'll be available after 3 months. For the $10 a month you'll receive all the above, plus a handwritten note from me. Whether you want that or not, I don't know. But yeah, you get a handwritten note from me. And you also get entered into a draw with the other people who've donated $10 a month. And you can be part of the show. I will pick you out of a draw. And whoever's picked out of the draw will get to come on. I will Skype you during an interview. And you'll get to ask your question to the guest directly. I think that's pretty cool. So there you go. You can check out on my website, hellblazerbiz.com. There's a little badge at the bottom right. It says, become a patron. Or you can go to https://patron.podbean.com/hellblazerbiz and you'll find all the details there to become a patron on my show. I thank you very much. My guest today comes courtesy of his Wikipedia page. He's been writing since the age of 12. In 2009 he began producing free psychological thriller and horror podcasts as well. A fellow podcaster, an award-winning one too. He's also written essays and reviews which are available from shadowpublications.com and iTunes. He's the author of a number of series of stories, which many are interconnected, including Fiend's Tales, Garage's Children, Tony Downs, and The Black, published by Severed Press, for which I've just read recently. Fantastic. He's also co-written an episode of Scott Sigler's The Crypt, an audio anthology series, as well as the novella The Rider, set in Sigler's GFL universe, still to be released. His works have been published by Severed Press via Blue Moose Press, published by Dark Overlord Media, and self-published. Many works of fiction are also available as digital audio downloads in podcast form. He co-hosts the Dead Robots Society podcast, a weekly roundtable discussion podcast examining issues related to writing with a speculative fiction focus, and he's lent his voice to voice talent to many podcast fiction productions. Today I am proud to bring to you Mr. Paul E. Cooley. Okay, so everybody, I have the pleasure of the company of the Parsec Award-winning author, even Paul E. Cooley. Good evening, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good afternoon, isn't it? Sorry, in Texas.
Yeah, it's 1408. Yeah, 1408.
Yeah, I always get mixed up because I say it's a time zone difference, 6 hours ahead of you over here. On a lovely
and
sunny
sometimes
day.
7.
Sometimes 7, yeah, sometimes 7. That's messed me around quite a few times, and I've been trying to arrange things as well.
I understand all too well.
Indeed. So, I've got a few questions I've put together for you, and to try and find out a bit more about you, and obviously I'm excited to bring you on because of, I've just listened to the series of the Black series from Audible, and also Derelict, which was one of your new latest ones too. And I've got a question, which we've just talked about, because I'm eagerly awaiting the next in that series. So hurry up.
yeah, you and everybody else. Can you write faster? I'm trying.
Yeah, get on it. You know, you've got a lot of people waiting for that.
It's a good problem to have. It's a good
is.
problem to have.
It is. I mean, I've obviously just done my intro there based on your Wikipedia page that you've got up there. And it's interesting to see. I mean, you've been writing since you were 12 years old?
Yeah, off and on. I just kind of fell in love with it because it gave me a chance to kind of get in my own headspace. And I have kind of social anxiety problems. And so it kind of allowed me as a kid just to, hide in my room and live in my imagination. And I think it's kind of harder to have an imagination as you grow a little older. People start laughing at you for playing with your Legos and your G.I. Joes or whatever else it was we had in the 80s. And so you kind of find new and interesting ways to play before you discover things like drinking, smoking, girls, things like that. So, I kept at it and kept through high school and studied English and literature with a creative writing focus in college. And I stopped writing in my 20s because of a fight with an agent and didn't really start again until I started podcasting at age, good God, 37. Yeah. So I've only been back at it for about 9 years now.
All right. Okay. I mean, did you get any sort of did you get into competitions in school and things like that when you were there, when you were writing in there?
Yeah, I won a creative writing award at high school, and then I also won a grant for short story writing at Colorado State University, where I graduated from.
Oh, very nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought I was hot shit.
Well, yeah, getting yourself a grant, winning the awards, top dog.
Yeah. See how that worked out for me. I ended up in a career doing computers. So
yeah, it's kind of where I've ended up. I started acting. I tell them when I speak to my guests, it's like I always go through. I started acting, and that's what I wanted to do when I was 18. Did all the degree, the qualifications in school, exams up to the age of 18. Then I got steered by my folks for all the right reasons into a career which ended up that for the last 20 odd years I've sat in an office behind a computer working in IT as well. So yeah, I totally understand that. And I'm now picking up my love of doing this kind of thing, like you've just, in a smaller scale version of what you've managed to achieve, picking it back up again and becoming published as well. So yeah.
Yay! Join the ranks of the poor. Impoverished but happy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They say money doesn't make happiness. Just throw some my way and I'll let you know if I am. That's what I always say. You also very much deal in dark tales and sci-fi. That seems to be your genre. Has that always been the genre of taste, or has it changed over the years?
It's changed over the years. I was originally known as a horror writer. A little bit of urban fantasy here and there, but primarily horror. And I think my heart is still in that in a big way. I'm chomping at the bit to get the Derelict series done so I can go back and work on this semi-sequel to Closet Treats, which in a lot of ways is my favorite novel that I've written.
Yeah.
But the sci-fi stuff kind of happened by accident, and Black happened by accident. So it was it's kind of pushed me into this area where it's okay. I got this stuff that I like to write. I'll try and make it as dark as I can get away with and put in as much social commentary and everything as I want to put in there and just make it fun and it sells. Yeah. So I don't feel like a sellout for doing it. I feel like I've got a chance to bring some people into parts of the sci-fi genre that they hadn't considered. And I've always loved sci-fi horror. And I was bitching last year or the year before about the fact there wasn't enough sci-fi horror, not enough good stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm basically trying to bring it back and make it make it a good staple, but something that regular sci-fi fans can enjoy as well as folks who like suspense and thriller. So that's basically what I'm trying to do these days.
Fantastic. You are right. I think there is a void in that sort of whole genre at the moment. There was a big glut of it, and then it's just died out again. So we need to bring it back.
I think it is coming back slowly but surely. I remember, the films that had the most direct impact on me were, films like The Exorcist, Alien, John Carpenter's The Thing. There's always a childish glee in watching a monster just rampage and destroy everything in its path, and for humans to be just completely clueless as to how to stop it. there's part of that is just so much fun as a writer and as a reader, because I mean, my favorite thing to do is make you care about the characters and then put them in absolute disgustingly destructive situations. And some of them don't make it out alive because, again, I like killing people. In fact, I have an entire list of readers and listeners that have put their names in the hat to get killed. Some of them give me money to get killed in books. A bunch of sickos out there.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's pretty twisted. There's just a love for it, and games like Dead Space did really, really well, and there's other sci-fi horror games that have done well, and I think that the younger, the 20 to 30s crowd really, really likes it. So I'm trying to find the stories that work in that, and I wanted to write them. I just never knew how to do it. Now I know how to do it.
All right, fair enough. That sounds good. It's and you are writing them very well. Like I say, we'll get on to the series. You're welcome. I mean, I've only discovered you recently because I was looking through Audible for something to listen to when I was driving, because I'd commute an hour and a half each way to work.
That's when I got into podcasts, was when I had a hellish commute. So I understand completely.
Yeah, I think that's how I did it, to be fair. I think it was originally because it was Constantine, the TV series, and I couldn't tweet when I was driving, but I thought if I had something up there and had a voice, I could record something. So I started recording little greeting messages about doing impressions for like 10 or 15 minutes, just to boost fans on and say keep going, keep supporting the show. You get it renewed, and doing impressions, and that's how it started for me, because I was sat in a traffic jam.
Well, just so you know, I have books 1 through 100 sitting in a box upstairs in my room of Hellblazer. So
brilliant.
I'm a big fan of that series.
Oh, that's cool. That's kind of how, that's obviously hence my name. This is where the show came from.
Right.
Yeah, it was mainly because of the TV show, I've got to say, because I didn't look at the comic or the graphic novels until after that.
Shame on you.
I know, I'd heard of it, but I just never had the time to sit and read stuff. So yeah, very big shame. But I'm now sort of professional friends with Matt Ryan as well, which makes me happy.
Oh, cool.
Yes, it's quite cool. I've got the Hellblazer as a contact. Excellent.
And now I'm jealous.
Cool. I mean, another one of your books that I wanted to discuss was, it intrigued me because of what you do with the donations for it, and that's the street.
God.
Yeah, because I mean, you donate some of that, obviously $2 of each sale to Sesame Street in there, and the way you've described it, just when I read it, was just like, that sounds really intriguing. So can you tell me a bit about that?
That project is no longer available to anyone and their dog. It was New Jack City meets 30s or 40s noir is what it was, with puppets.
Okay.
So all the stories were told by Oscar the Grouch, Private Eye, and it's what happened to Sesame Street after PBS folded because the neocons shut it down. Mm-hmm. And all the puppets are alive and all hell broke loose. So it was already a slum, but then it turned into basically a drug-riddled, crime-ridden area. And Oscar was just an anti-hero, like the Hellblazer comic books, in the sense that he had his own kind of ethos, but nobody else could understand what that ethos was. But it was a lot of fun. I wrote it as a lark. I wrote the first story, Stuffing, as a lark, and for a Tawaka Con, which was an online con, believe it or not. And I didn't want to read something I'd already written, so I wrote Stuffing in about 3.5 hours after whoever I can't even remember who it was, whatever presidential candidate said Big Bird just needed to get a job. So it ticked me off, and I went crazy, wrote it 3.5 hours, and then I narrated it and tore my voice to hell and gone by channeling Oscar, because this is how he sounds like. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of fun. I didn't realize I could write parody that well. And after I finished it, I was like, this is just a one-off. Everybody's going to be like, what the hell was that? Instead, it was like, where's the next story?
Oh,
so every December, I would put out a Christmas present for my listeners and patrons, which was another street story.
Yeah.
But since then, I've had to stop because I got Let's just say I got warned that the mouse would not appreciate what I had done, so it was time to shut it down. Unfortunately.
Oh, that is a shame. That damn mouse. Yeah, seems to put its stamp on everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I got that as well. I know what you're saying with the voice as well, because I only did 5 minutes. I did a 5-minute interview with Yoda. Sorry, as it's now, 5-minute interview with little green alien from outer space, because the mouse came and shut me down for calling it Yoda.
God, yeah, the copyright registered trademark and all that crap can really just it makes writing parodies absolute hell, because you have to really change things around. And once I was faced with having to change all the character names in the street, I was like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I loved it because it was destroying my childhood, but at the same time, it was everything was done out of love. I think Jim Henson probably would have laughed his ass off. So I really do think he would have.
Probably, yeah. I've had the pleasure of one of his Muppeteers on as well last year. He was a Muppeteer with Jim Henson for 25 years. He started out as a little 13-year-old kid, just not forced himself upon Jim Henson. That's quite wrong in so many ways.
Cajoled him until he got a shot, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah, over in London. Helped him out and stuff like that. That was cool. But yeah, the Yoda thing with the voice, I did 5 minutes speaking as Yoda, and yeah, it was I can still do it, but every time my son gets me to ask, to do Yoda or Donald Duck or any of those types of things, it's like, yeah, that's great. Then you don't see the half-hour coughing fit where I can't speak afterwards because
it got
voice.
So bad. It got so bad when I was doing the full-length audiobook, I was gargling bourbon. I mean, it was just like I was coughing after every 2 sentences. It was awful. Awful.
In fact, it's probably where I've got this cough from, because I keep doing it so much. It's like that, when 900 years old, I can't even do it now, see my God. So, when 900 years old, you reach look as good, you will not. There you go.
God. Now I'm terrified.
But yeah, I like the interviews. People like that as well. It's quite funny. I was quite rude in it. It was what Yoda did with Leia's mama.
Oh God,
yeah, that kind of
the Yoda memes that I see these days is just like, just shake my head. God, it's awful. It's almost as bad as the memes I get about Oscar, which I get like almost every other day. The series has been dead for a couple of years, and yet I'm still getting memes about Oscar and Sesame Street. And that probably will continue till I die.
Oh yeah, they'll stay with you. I remember saying, I think it was something like Luke saying, he goes, was it? Yeah, because aren't you a little short or something like that? You go, not what your mum said last night, did she? Shit like
Aren't
that.
You a little small? Yeah.
Yeah. It was stuff like that. Anyway, moving on to your series, which is what we're here for, is, like I said before, I've recently listened on Audible for the Black Trilogy, which was, we won a Parsec Award for Best Speculative Fiction, is that correct?
Yeah, for the Black.
Yeah, for the Black.
Outbreak is actually nominated this year too.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, because that was the 2015, so that would have been the original The Black, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's a fantastic story for there. What kind of influences writing it? I think when I've reading it, I can pick up various where you've probably got some influences from the genres we've talked about. So, where were your influences for writing it? Where did they come from? Because it is a unique story in the fact that the thing I love. I'm going to switch into my second bit here because I'm on a flow.
Go for it.
Is the fact that you get 3 novels with the same storyline, but they're totally different stories, which are obviously interconnected. And I can't say I've read that many where they've actually had that kind of interconnection because they're all happening parallel to each other, and
right.
And it's great because most of the novels I read, you get maybe a couple of chapters on what happened at the hospital, you get a couple of chapters what happened over there, rather than an entire book, and that's what draws you in, because you learn and you get to the end of one and you're like, oh! And then you get to the second one and it takes you right back, and then you're like, yeah, you're tearing your hair out, going, everything about it, and there's so many characters in there, and you do feel so close to them all, which is obviously your skills as an author in doing that. You're welcome. Did you envision having 3 separate stories for the Black originally, or did that just sort of flow as you got into it?
The Black was supposed to be this stupid little monster book that was to get me into get a book published. I got the contract for it on a pitch, and the Dead Robot Society podcast, where I'm a co-host. The 3 of us basically went through and brainstormed something, because I had an idea about having a zombie book on an oil rig.
Yeah.
And Sever Press was like, can you give me something better, something deep sea? And I was like, oh shit. So we started talking, and then it just kind of hit me. What if I combined John Carpenter's The Thing with The Blob with Alien? And I was like, oh yeah, this could work. So I started writing the book. My father was a chemical engineer. I've done a lot of work and software for the oil industry for 20 years. So I had a good idea of a lot of how this stuff worked. But we started getting into the exploration side of things, and oil exploration, and seeing how dangerous it was, and all the research I was doing. Then I discovered this horrible thing where after they drill a hole, an exploratory hole, they have to bring up oil and send it back to get tested. Well, I was halfway through the book, I think, is when that happens. And I was writing, I was like, wait a minute, this barrel of stuff ended up in Houston. What happened in Houston? Oh, I guess I need to write another book. So I thought about actually writing that book simultaneously with The Black and putting them together. But then I realized that wasn't going to work. And the other thing was, I wanted to play with the idea that The Black was evolving depending on the situations it was in. And what better way to show that off than go to the place where it was being tested, have a chance to show what it was, what it is, what it's not, and how our instrumentation fails to figure out what it is. And then, of course, somebody has to get infected while they're testing it. Okay, well, that leads to outbreak. Yeah. So, yeah, all 3 stories end up taking that place at the same time, but that was really not intentional from the beginning. It was just, I got to the end of The Black and realized I want to write more about this creature, and I have more characters. So it was just it was a happy accident, and I'm very pleased it worked out that way. And The Black Evolution, which is the next book, when I get around to writing it, will basically combine the survivors from the first 3 books into a different setting and different kind of story. So it's still going. There's going to be 2 more books in that series, and then it will be done.
All right, cool.
So.
Brilliant. You just answered it. That's why I'm deleting another question there, because you just preempted me right there. I want to write Evolution. Evolution is going to be kind of crazy, and then the 5th book is going to be called Extinction. We're just going to let that. I'm not going to say a word about what I have in mind for that, but it's going to be bad news. So, excellent. It's very good. I mean, those influences where you said The Blob, The Thing, they're the things which came to mind in Alien, especially with going through the vent systems and using those, but using it, as I say, in your own unique way. So for those out there, because it's not. Because there are some things which are just rip-offs. That's not the way you've done it. Is so clever, and you've utilised the best and the scariest, I think, of certain different things. Because I'll admit, I was driving home in my car sometimes, and I was, gripping the steering wheel, listening to. It's like, oh, come on, please run! They're up there! You stupid idiot! They're up there.
Part of the joy of writing suspense is getting the reader to love the character, and then give the reader information the character doesn't have.
Yeah.
And then the character or the reader has to go read the next chapter to see if the character survives or not. It's evil, it's horrible, and it works, and it sells books. And I love doing it because it's just a lot of fun as a writer to figure out just how many horrible things you can do and have a character walk away from them. So it's the Black was a blast for that, because in all 3 stories the characters are basically locked in to where they are, and The Black is probably the worst, because those folks are thousands of miles from the mainland, and there's no possible way to escape anywhere.
Exactly. At least in the other two areas, that there are hints that they could escape. There's hints that they could, they're on land basically, so they could get out.
Yeah, the world
run.
is right outside the walls. They just can't get outside the walls.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And yeah, whereas an oil rig, you're screwed.
Yeah, it's just like being in space. There's nowhere to go.
Exactly.
I mean, where do you go when something happens to the ship? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
you're done.
Exactly. I loved all those the descriptions as well. The other descriptions, like when obviously in the black at the bottom of the sea, where the anglerfish and just happily going along, didn't see that, and things, and all of a sudden it's woomph, that's it. And those, even small explanations like that is just very, very good creativity, which sort of drew me in even more then, because as soon as I got the one, I was like, damn it, I've got to get the rest now.
Well, that was part of the probably the most challenging part of the black, was figuring out how to explain and give a viewpoint to the reader as to what was going on 5 miles below the ocean, because humans can't go down there. So I had to use the autonomous underwater vehicles. I had to give a couple of chapters from some of the fish that were down there and things like that, just so we had a viewpoint of what was going on. And, the lanternfish was fun because I got to do all this research about all these undersea creatures. And then every single day, somebody would send me an article on a new underwater monster or something they'd found. So it was a lot of fun to do all the research on that and then incorporate it into the book. It was just a blast.
I can imagine. I can imagine. That'd be great. Someone should do a story about the blobfish.
The blobfish. They gave me slippers at the last con I was at that were blobfish.
Really?
There's a running gag at all the cons that I go to, Balticon anyway. Every year I get a new pair of slippers that I have to wear at the con, and this year was blobfish.
They're pretty cool. That's not too bad at all. I love it. They're just really weird creatures. They've just got human faces.
Yeah, they're kind of bizarre. I mean, if you go look at all the undersea stuff, and some of it looks so alien, and then other parts of it you're like, that almost looks like it could walk on land but shouldn't.
Yeah.
So it's always very interesting to play with those ideas.
Well, it's true, especially when you think when the oceans, I think we know more about space and outer space and what's out there than we do at the bottom of our oceans. It's like, I think we should
completely agree.
We should be turning our attention to what's on this planet because,
it's the scary part about that is it's easier to explore space than it is the ocean, because once you get, it's the pressure, it's the atmospheres, it's the darkness and the cold, which almost matches space, and in some cases actually eclipses it. So, deepest midnight, once you get far enough down in the ocean, there is absolutely no light.
Yeah.
And there's no starlight, nothing penetrates. So it's kind of terrifying in a lot of ways, but it is a part of of our ecosystem that we need to do a better job taking care of. And I would certainly love to see us do more exploration in it.
Oh,
there's no telling what's down there.
Well, no, it's like, you hear all these stories and everyone puts them down to legend and myth of sea monsters, and it's like, well, how do you know they're myth? We don't know anything about the oceans. They could just be hiding there.
Well, there could be some creature sitting 30,000 feet below in a nice little trench where they're going to dig for oil. It could happen.
Yeah, it could.
Things like that could happen.
Very, very true. Which is a speculative award for you there, because it's what could happen. We've mentioned it as well. We touched on the fact you've got a great way of letting the reader identify with each of the characters, and there are in the black. There's definitely a lot of different characters, but you do identify with all of them, and you're gutted when a lot of them die. When people...
Spoiler alert!
Yeah. Well, when I
not
say
much of a spoiler alert.
No. You have to read the back and realise what kind of novel it is to think, right, okay, you know what's going to happen here.
It has a really happy ending. Yeah. Trust me. Rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah. Well, when the whole vision of your website is that we don't believe in happy endings, there.
That should tell you everything you need to know.
Exactly. I mean, do you find yourself you get into the heads of each of your characters as well? Is that how you sort of draw yourself out as an author? Trying to find out more of your intimate secrets of how you write characters?
I hate my editor and I love my editor because there's a lot of things there's a lot of chapters that get dumped because they don't necessarily further the story, but they further the character. And I do love to spend time with characters as much as possible, especially if I really I want to find out who they are, why they do what they do. And I want to give the reader insight into those things. And there's a certain point where you have to kind of chop it off and say, okay, well, this is a really interesting anecdote or story that happened in this person's life, but it does not fit in this book. All right, fine. Throw in the dead letter file. Let's take it up in another book.
Yeah.
So it's always difficult, but I mean, even the little scenes where we get where it's a character we've never met before, and you just jump into their heads and you have like 4 or 5 paragraphs to let the reader know who this person is, and make them care just enough to where when they snuff it, it's like, oh shit. Yeah. But you kind of I try and use those the same way that Shakespeare used the beginnings of plays and when they came back from the intermission and the acts, like the Montagues and Capulets before things kick off and Romeo and Juliet are trading all these sexual barbs back and forth. Yeah. And then in Hamlet, you got, of course, the gravediggers. So I love to throw in those little tension breakers that actually further the plot because you see something that is important later, but it's something, since we never get in the head of the big bad beastie, I need to show you something that happened to prepare you for 2 scenes, 3 scenes later. Yeah. So what better way to do that than make an interesting character or caricature and have them do something silly and then snuff it. It's just stuff like that where you can have a really, really good time with it, and it serves the story at the same time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there was one character I definitely can tell you. It was in Outbreak. Yeah, the one in the lab, that's Outbreak, isn't it? Yeah. Yep. And I've completely forgotten her name, but the one who obviously caught the disease from the cut on the hand.
That's Arrival. Yeah,
Arrival. Sorry, yeah, that's the one. Because it's at the lab where they're testing first. That's right. And she got obviously contaminated there. But you'd already built that up because, like you say, in the several paragraphs, you'd built up the relationship between her and her Chuckles, isn't it? Those sort of Chuckles. There's a relationship going there, and you can build all that up. And I was like, oh, this is see how this is going to develop. Then, boom, bang! I was like, shit.
there was a potential romance here, and you just destroyed it.
Yeah. I was thinking that's a really good story. I was thinking that's going to be a really nice little storyline in the background to go along, keep things a little bit happy. But bam, no. Snubbed out.
No, I needed her to do what she did. I just kind of needed that to happen for the book.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, I've got to ask, have you had any dealings with the CDC? Because the way you paint them in the books is hilarious. Obviously, it's not in a very shining light, so I was just wondering if that was any from any personal experience.
I know a couple of folks in the infectious disease area who are specialists in it. If you read about some of the bureaucracy that went on, like during the AIDS epidemic, and just how myopic and ignorant and bullheaded and everything else that the top brass were compared to the folks that were on the ground, you get an idea just how stupid any of these things can be run. Yeah. And I've seen the same behavior in corporations, so it's not just government. But once you get to the top management, they can make some really, really terrible decisions. With Outbreak and Arrival both, I was trying to paint what happens when people who think they know what's going on and are used to certain things, how they react when everything goes to hell in a handbag, when nothing appears what it is. I mean, imagine if you're on the ground, you've dealt with Ebola and all this other kind of stuff, and Ebola's no big deal. We know how to protect ourselves from that. And then it starts burrowing through your suit. That kind of changes things quite a bit. And suddenly none of the safety precautions, none of your training, most of it just falls by the wayside and no longer applies. So that's a fun space to play. And there are some of the CDC folks, especially in Outbreak, that do have clue. In Arrival, they're used as foils for the scientists. and that's why I did the way they were in Arrival versus Outbreak, because in Outbreak they're much more cool-headed, calm, and helpful, whereas in Arrival they're basically clueless and scared and terrified from moment one. So it's just kind of a different deal. But no, I have not had any specific dealings with the CDC.
Fair enough. I just did wonder about that because it's a the nice. But again, as you drawn on these very cynical, some of its cynical way that bureaucracy can manage itself, and I've been well aware of the bureaucracy that things go in this place. So it must be even more 100-fold in the States with the size that you've got compared to the UK. Government-wise.
Yeah, it can get pretty bad. You guys have queues, we just have cluelessness. So.
I guess that's true. Right, the CDC. Yeah, I mean, obviously moving on from the Black there. I've lost my train of thought because I was quite in depth listening to you then, thinking that's actually relating it to what I've just listened to, and it works out really well. After I'd finished the Black, I'd obviously moved on to Derelict because I was desperate. I was searching around to figure out what else you'd done, so I could, get some more of listening and reading, or listening in my case. And Derelict Marines is what sprang up, which is again, it's in space, so you got the Black in the sea in an oil rig, and then you move into space. Did you have to have much research to do to understand space travel for the novel?
Tons and tons and tons. I was already researching a book called Signal Decay, which hopefully will be out next year. And this has been a running gag on Dead Robot Society. My co-host Terry Mixon writes space opera, and his books sell quite well, and he's very good at it. And they kept telling me, you need to write a book with Space Marines. You need to write a book with Space Marines. You need to write a book with Space Marines. I said, I'm not writing a goddamn book with Space Marines. And then I was at Dragon Con, and I had an idea, and I needed to have another series to bring in cash so I could afford to work on Signal Decay, because I'm kind of up in the air as to whether or not it will sell. So I came up with the idea of Derelict. And I love ghost ship stories. I just love them. And, one of my favorite films, this shows you how bad my taste is Event Horizon. And, the idea of a ship just showing up that shouldn't exist or everybody thought was destroyed and coming back and then having people go on board and find out where it's been is just one of those ideas that really strikes my imagination. We had the Marie Celeste in history. We have several different ideas of that, the Roanoke colony, for instance, where there's nobody there, nobody home, and nobody knows what happened, but the place is still there. It still has signs that it was occupied. Yeah. You have a ship there floating in with nobody aboard and no idea what happened, no record. And maybe the idea of exploring something like that and then slowly finding out what happened, that really struck my imagination. So I came up with I basically expanded the universe I'd already built for Signal Decay and just created the Derelict story. And it was a lot of research. There's no telling how much of it's wrong, but there was a lot of research involved in figuring out, do I want to have faster than light travel? No, I don't want to do that. So what am I confined by? How do you stop momentum of an object? What kind of microgravity exists near Pluto? I mean, all these different things that you had to calculate and go for. So it took a lot of work, but it was basically the same kind of work I did for the Black and for oil as well as for underwater creatures and how everything works. So it was fun. My only problem now is NASA keeps trying to screw me. Because one of the dangers of writing sci-fi that takes place in our own solar system is these yokels keep finding out new stuff every single freaking day. And, some of the things they talked about, like they just proved quantum entanglement, the Chinese did from satellites. And if what they're saying actually happened, it's like, holy shit, I wouldn't have to wait 6 hours for a message to get from Pluto to Neptune and Neptune back. Right. It would just be instantaneous. And that would solve so many freaking problems for me. But can't use it yet. Don't want to use it, actually, because I like the time lag. But, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, some reader is going to be like, What do they mean it took 6 hours? We've got this real-time communication that goes, faster than light speed. Why do we need this anymore? So it's like 10, 20 years, people are going to read this and they're going to think it's just as stilted, myopic, ignorant, and debased of facts as what we're reading that was written in the 50s. Yeah. And that really terrifies the hell out of me. But, it's bound to happen because whenever you're dealing with near future or, far future science fiction, it's a risk. The technology is moving so fast and we're discovering things at such a clip that it makes it impossible to be a futurist without, being wrong or proved wrong, 3 minutes from now. So that's the only frustrating part of being a sci-fi author.
I guess that as well. That's that time lag that you do have in there. It does work perfectly because of the reason why there's a time lag, and with Black talking to the other AI, things like that, and why is there a delay? Why aren't they responding? Then they have to wait, and the suspense builds up. So that really, really does work there as well. I'm trying to think of what I can do now. Is the quest those? The Event Horizon was something I did think of as well, because I was thinking that I love that film. I think it's great. It's it's very different. And obviously when you come across the, oh my god, this is where the mirror. Oh, what's the name of the ship?
Mirror.
Mirror, that's it. Why was I going to call it Mary? I stopped literally, Paul. I finished the book 2 days ago.
Because I brought the Mary Celeste up. That's what did.
Yeah, you've knocked me. Yeah, there you go. It's your fault. Yeah, no, I only literally stopped about 2 days ago listening to Derelict, and it really was. And again, it was like the Black. It's got right to the end, and it's like, you can't leave it there. Seriously, just do not leave it right there, because you build it up, and you go through a quarter of the book, maybe a bit more, and you're building the relationships up. You can see the animosity between obviously the Marines there, and the new recruit, the new NCOs, corporals, the new NCOs, and you get all that feeling. And then they finally come together, and then the shit goes down. It's just like, god damn. What? And
then the shit's really going to go down in the second book. So, great. Yeah, the second book is actually longer than the first one by like 20,000 words. So.
Oh, right, brilliant. And we were talking about that before. When's that? That's what you're working on at the moment to get out?
The paperback and ebook have been out since end of May.
Right.
And the audiobook, I'll have it to Audible hopefully by Wednesday or Thursday, and it'll probably take them 4 or 5 days to do that, but it'll be available from my site in 3 to 4 days. So
brilliant.
You can purchase it from either place, and there's also the weekly podcast where actually Friday, as a matter of fact, the Friday is the last episode of Marines and the first episode of Tomb. So I'm basically given like an hour of content on Friday.
Oh, right. Excellent. I shall subscribe to that, and because I say this, I just want to get the first chapter and even the first part of it, just because I got to the stage where it's like you can't leave that. Obviously, you've got them. I won't spoil it for people who are still listening, but you've got certain people in one part and they're locked off from the other, and it's.
I leave them in a rather precarious position.
Yeah.
Derelict was again supposed to be this little monster book, and as often happens with my brain, I just kept going and finding new things to f with, and was like, okay, fine, let's go balls to the wall. So part of the problem with being a full-time writer is that I'm getting paid royalties a quarter behind, which sucks. But also, every time I put out a new book, the other books bring up. They go up, and I sell more books. So I could have either spent 6 months to write the entire Derelict saga, 6 to 9 months, and not made any money in that time, and still not see any money for 6 months after I'd finished it. Or I could finish the first book, put it out, work on the second book, and basically it's turning into a serialized saga, which some people have really bitched about. Some people really turned off by it. But the thing is, I got to eat. So
fair enough.
And I don't think we're charging too much and for anything. And I don't know if Destruction, the third book, is going to finish off the series or not. I don't know yet. There may be a fourth. But there's a lot to cover. There's just this would be a 300, 400,000 word story. It's going to be that's what the first book was like, 237 pages. The second book is 280 or 300. So if you imagine another 300 on top of that, we're getting close to doorstop size, if not eclipsing doorstop size. So it's actually a really, really large book. I'm hoping that ultimately we can put out an omnibus edition that puts it all together.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be really good.
My goal is to finish the entire Derelict saga this year. Have it all done. That's the goal.
Fantastic. That'll be good to say. It will keep me going while I'm driving.
That's the idea, anyway.
Yeah. I say that they are great, and I say it's the amount of accidents probably nearly caused because all of a sudden it's just gone, nah, I'm screaming at my and they are. It's just because of I just love a good book where you can, because I've got an imagination, like you said, we've talked about before. As you grow older, you lose your imagination. It's not that you lose it, like you say. It's just as you grow older, it's a bit more difficult to express your imagination in society because the way people judge you. I collect still 1/6 figures, so like pretty much GI Joe. So I'm 42, and I've got my I create dioramas for them and things like that because that's how I sort of use my imagination around, and obviously every day in work and things like that. And my 10-year-old son, great having a kid because his imagination, you could turn around and use yours and you get away with it.
Yes, absolutely, you get away with it. I think the biggest reason to have children is so you can remain a kid.
Exactly. It's that's keeps me young. And because that's why I love reading, because you can watch a film and I'm a huge movie and TV fan, but a book for me is better because it stimulates your brain into starting to believe you're actually in there. I can't do that as much with a film, but with a book, I always feel like it transports me straight into that page. I'm feeling everything with them. With the Black, I was there. I was on the oil rig. I was running down the corridors. I was screaming at them to just move out of the way.
Don't do it! Yeah. Don't do it! I like to think of when I'm writing and when I'm reading, the biggest difference between doing those and watching something on TV is that I don't ever check Twitter or look at news or open up my phone at all when I'm reading. I've got a movie going on in my head. And if it's a good book that has caught me and really caught my imagination, I am seeing that in my brain. I'm not just digesting the words, but if the scenes are there, then I'm imagining those people doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so, it is a different experience. I think that's one of the true crimes of the internet culture and movies and TV. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge avid consumer of both, all three actually, is the fact that we have somehow lost our ability or our want to spend time with books and spend time with the written word and spend time in our own imagination. So I'm hoping that maybe if enough of us schmucks are writing stuff that people can relate to, that we can, get them back into using their brains, using their minds to imagine these places, and maybe they'll create their own worlds.
Yeah, exactly. That's eloquently put what I was trying to say, and in a brilliant way. It is because that's right. You do have a movie in your head, and it's the same for me. If I'm reading, everything else goes down because I'm always on my phone. My wife will, quite happily tell you how many times she shouts at me because I walk around. But we don't need zombies. You just look out the window, and I'll admit I'm one. You look out the window, and people are like that constantly. And there's the zombies are here. We've been overrun by people because.
Yeah, Shaun of the Dead made that very, 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 very clear.
Yeah.
Basically, there's a zombie apocalypse. They get through it, and nothing changes.
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing changes.
Yeah.
People have a heart, except for the fact that the zombies want to eat people. They're using them as cashiers. They're using them to, stack up trolleys. It's so bad. The social commentary was just, bad news.
It was a perfect movie as well.
Love that flick. It's a good one.
It is definitely. But you're right. It's, I think we need to bring that back more as well. I tried to teach my son move on to read, to put everything else down and just engross yourself in the book. And he does. He likes wildlife ones at the moment, so it's different because they're not story ones, but he does enjoy that. And there's a whole sense of it because your mind can visualize so much more than an image on a TV ever can. And it's the power of that imagination, and I think teaching that to the generations to come, of focusing your imagination and focusing your thoughts and reading and learning. And because I learn a lot through the books because of the research that you as an author would put into the books, there's a lot I can bring out and learn which I wouldn't have known before, and we've got to carry that on and make sure that doesn't get lost, because you're right, with all the media that we've got going on, it's something that I think has been pushed to the side.
It just gets more and more difficult to find the good stuff. I mean, the thing that really terrifies the hell out of me, and has since it showed up, is reality TV.
Oh God!
Because I mean, what a bigger waste of time could you possibly have? Because there's no imagination going on, really. It's these ridiculously convoluted setups, which more and more, as we find out more and more about the stuff, it's all staged anyway, and it's not even staged well.
Yeah.
And that's a real problem. And it just is like, okay, are we really putting stuff on TV that is so bad that this looks good? That is a terrible indictment of just how things have swung. But I'm hopeful, because at least with studios like what Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, and et cetera are trying to bring out, that we're actually getting some more God, I dare to say this, literature inspired ideas and ideals and real story of real characters. And I think that's actually a good thing. And hopefully that will lead people back into books, because those kinds of stories, they're in all these novels. They're in all the classic novels. They're in a lot of the genre fiction novels. Those stories are already there. Those characters are already there, and they're much more fleshed out and much more immersive than they ever could be on TV or on the film screen. So I'm hoping that we're seeing a change in taste away from this reality schlock to better tales.
Yeah. And
that's all I want, is better stories.
Well, yeah, that's all we need. I mean, the reality TV, don't get me started. Everyone I speak to, they just can't stand. I've got a lot of talented screenwriter friends as well, because obviously, like you said, they write for the TVs, and they're all sitting out of work as well because there's so much reality crap on, and it's like all these there's lots of talented people out there who can't tell stories, and that's the crux of it. They can't tell the stories that they've got, and they can't get picked up because you've got, I think it's just greed and laziness in top circles, who just think this will just sell, we don't have to do much at all, go for it, and that's sad. It's kind of indicative of how we are at the moment as a society.
Well, the publishing industry has been there too for the last 15, 20 years, and it's only getting worse.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that all across the board, and it is what can we make the quickest buck on without spending money, and that's really what it has come down to. And that's why more and more of us are going independent, or hooking up with small companies where we can get away with the murder that we could not get away with the big five.
Yeah. And
we can be raw, we can be crazy, we can tell stories that, man, no publisher would ever publish a book about a compound of a walled-off suburb during the zombie apocalypse where the people still have to deal with the homeowners association. That's Suburbia by Jake Bible, one of the most popular series of zombie lore. That book would never have happened with the big five. Yeah, because it's just too ridiculous, and yet it works, and it's wonderful. And that's the kind of stuff that comes out of the minds of people who are just love to tell stories and go crazy with them. And that's what I want to see, is more of that independent. YouTube has given independent filmmakers an outlet for that stuff. You can make films pretty damn cheaply these days with good cameras and whatnot. Yep. And the digital effects don't cost all that much. Granted, I'd love to see more practical, but it's expensive. Yeah. But the bottom line is, you have folks who can create 15-minute short films that lead to these blockbuster movies or big production, and that excites me, and that excites the hell out of me. Yeah. And so I think there's I think there's hope. I think there's a chance. Some of these indie authors get picked up by big publishing companies once they put something out there, and I still think that there's hope. So I'm not throwing in the towel yet.
Excellent, excellent. I've actually got a friend who's writing a short horror. I'm not going to obviously spoil the plot, but there's going to be she's doing physical effects in there as well. And I've been sort of helping her along and where I can. Not that I'm an expert, but I've been trying to sort of advise where I can and sort of boost her on. And yeah, that's going to be quite. I think that's going to be quite good if she can get it through, which she should do. But I've seen some of the physical effects she's been putting together, and it's good.
It's amazing what some of these guys can do. I was at a con several years ago, and there were folks there. They had created their own strap-on Steadicam. So basically, they could run with the Steadicam attached to somebody's vest. Yeah. And do all sorts of crazy things they could not do without spending thousands and thousands of dollars. And this is something they made in the garage. So, I mean, it's stuff like that. The independent spirit breeds those kind of contraptions. Yeah. And it's just wonderful to see. It's wonderful to watch.
It is. It's like it's definitely much more of a freedom for everyone to express their ideas and get it out there. I mean, for me, for example, no one would want to pick this up, so that's why it's 2 years on, and podcasting. That's how it's done. There, it's this sort of a freedom to express and pass things on without having to battle with like you say, the big five publishers or networks and things like that. You can get yourself seen quite a lot easier out there, and it's good. And there's some fantastic. YouTube's got some great stuff on there, which is independent made as well, and some great web series and everything.
Yeah, it's terrifying how much some of these folks can put together for just basically their time and a little bit of money spent in the gear, and it's wonderful to see that they're making money off of it, and for some of them it's turned into a career, and that's awesome. That's exactly what we want to see.
Exactly. Is there any advice you'd give to budding authors? Yourself?
Don't do it. Excuse me.
Sorry.
I think the biggest deal or the biggest advice I can give is don't stop. And I say this on DRS all the time as well. I think the best way to learn how to be a good writer is to go find books that are well written and study them. Find your favorite book, read it, go back and analyze why it is you like it. If you're a filmmaker, you do the same thing. You should go watch a movie that you love and go tear it apart after made. Find out what it is the author's doing. What tricks are they using to, make all this happen, and why is it important to you? Because really what it comes down to is when you're writing for yourself. You may write in a genre that's quote unquote hot at the time, but you're still writing for yourself. And you want to write stuff that you would enjoy reading. And I think that's the biggest part of this craft is learning what it is you want to say and how you want to say it. But saying it the right way, part of that comes with just practice, and read, and dissect as much as possible. And I think that's the best way to approach it. And, I worked at this for 7 years and then became an overnight success. So it can take a while to manifest, but it's worth it.
Yeah. I like that. 7 years and an overnight. Yes, that's what actors say to me as well. It's like, yeah, you get an overnight success with the 10-15 years work behind there.
Correct.
To get
and you look back on it when the Black first started selling like hotcakes. I was just sitting there going, what just happened? Because I wrote a better book 2 years ago that I think is better than this book, and all 5 people read it. So it's just it takes a long time. It takes a lot of gumption. It takes a lot of patience, and you just have to remember that every book, every story that you write is going to be better than the last one. So just keep writing.
Cool. That's some great advice there. The last question I've got for you is one which I've recently showed my research for you here, Paul. It's one you want everyone to ask, but no one asks you: is your insanity contagious?
You'd have to ask some of my some of the fiendlings. It's really funny. I go to cons and I'll sit down and be drinking with my patrons and other writers. And yes, the insanity is contagious because somebody will say something and it will spark a story idea in somebody else's head, even if it's just somebody who doesn't even write. And then suddenly they start laughing and you hear the most crazy bullshit you would ever imagine possible and then think, I could turn that into a book. So it's not just my insanity that's contagious. Everybody's insanity is contagious to a certain degree. I hope my insanity is contagious because then you'll be insane enough to buy the next book. So that's I want to go as far as I can with my brain and dig into all my own neuroses, put them on the page in an interesting and entertaining way for everybody else, and it's just therapy. It's all just therapy.
Fair enough. And before I stop recording, is there anything you'd like to say to people who are listening as one final thing?
If you want to find out more about me, go visit shadowpublications.com. You can find all my podcasts up on iTunes. I podcast every piece of fiction through the podcast. I do you can find me on Audible. I have a Patreon, so for as little as $1 a month, you can get exclusive content at patreon.com/Paul E Cooley, including advanced reader copies, free audiobooks, and things like that. So there's lots of ways to find out who I am and figure out if you like my stuff. So go give it a shot.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate your time coming to talk to me. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to that and finding out about more insights in being an author and a published author and an award-winning podcaster, something I will long to be one day. So thanks again. This has been Chris Gordon on Hellblazer Biz with author Paul E Cooley.